Welcome to Storytales. Please like this video and subscribe to Storytales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Kevin Varnett gripped the steering wheel and watched the Oregon coastline unfold through the windshield. Pine trees stretched toward gray clouds while waves crashed against jagged rocks below. The scenic route should have been peaceful, but tension filled the SUV like smoke from a hidden fire that had been smoldering for months. "Dad, can we stop at that overlook?" Rowan asked from behind him. His 15-year-old son had inherited Kevin's quiet observation skills, always noticing details others missed. The boy's voice carried hope, as if maybe this family vacation could still be what they'd all pretended it would be. "We'll see," Kevin said, checking the rearview mirror. His eyes met Rowan's briefly, and he saw the teenager's disappointment flicker before being carefully hidden. Too much like his father already. Lana twisted in the passenger's seat, her auburn hair catching sunlight as she gestured at her phone with the kind of theatrical energy she'd been using more often lately. "Actually, I mapped out all our stops already. We need to stay on schedule if we want to hit Crater Lake by sunset. I've been planning this route for weeks." Kevin noticed how she said "I" instead of "we." Everything was her plan, her vision, her carefully curated experience that the rest of them were just supposed to follow. "I thought this was supposed to be relaxing," Kevin said, his voice carefully neutral. He'd learned that tone in project management meetings, when dealing with clients who demanded impossible timelines. "It will be. Trust me." Lana's voice carried that edge he'd grown used to over the past year, the same tone she used when recording her podcast about authentic communication. Everything had to be her way, her timeline, her vision of what their family should look like for her audience. "Sometimes you have to be flexible, Kevin. That's what healthy relationships require." The irony wasn't lost on him. Flexibility, according to Lana, meant everyone else bending to accommodate her latest whim. That 12-year-old Mira bounced in her seat, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. "Mom, can I pick the next song? I made a playlist too." "In a minute, honey. I'm curating the perfect road trip playlist." Lana scrolled through her phone, dismissing Kevin's classic rock station without even asking. "We need something with more energy. Something that captures the spirit of adventure and family bonding." Kevin turned down the volume without comment. 23 years of marriage had taught him to pick his battles, though lately every conversation felt like one. Even the simple act of choosing music had become a power struggle, another opportunity for Lana to assert control over their shared experience. "The coast is beautiful," Rowan said, pressing his face to the window. "Wait until you see Crater Lake," Lana said. "I booked us this amazing spot right on the rim. The photos will be incredible for my podcast." Kevin's jaw tightened. Everything became content for Lana's self-help show these days. Their family moments, their private conversations, even their arguments got recycled into episodes about authentic communication and relationship growth. They drove in relative quiet for the next hour, the silence punctuated only by Myra's occasional comments about passing landmarks and Lana's careful documentation of their journey through photos and short video clips for her social media. Kevin watched her in his peripheral vision, noting how she angled the shots to capture only the smiling, happy moments, editing their reality in real time. "Pull over at this viewpoint," Lana announced as they crested a hill overlooking the Pacific. "The lighting is perfect for family photos." Kevin obliged, parking in an overlook crowded with other tourists. They spent 20 minutes posing for pictures that would later appear on Lana's Instagram with captions about blessed family time and making memories that last forever. The kids performed their roles dutifully, smiling on command while Kevin stood slightly apart, watching his wife orchestrate their happiness for public consumption. "One more with just me and the kids," Lana said, adjusting Myra's hair. "Kevin, you could take it." He took the photo, noting how natural his family looked without him in it. Lana's smile was genuine for the first time all morning as she pulled their children close, whispering something that made them both laugh. The moment felt like prophecy. They stopped only when Mira needed the bathroom at a gas station that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1980s. Kevin stretched his legs while Lana bought overpriced snacks and took more photos by a carved wooden welcome sign that proclaimed Oregon's beautiful coast. where memories begin. "You're quiet today," she said, sliding back into the passenger seat with an armload of trail mix and energy drinks. "Just driving. You've been quiet for weeks, actually. More than usual." She unwrapped a granola bar with the kind of deliberate casualness that meant she was fishing for something. "Is this about the money I spent on the hotel upgrades? Because I think the kids deserve nice memories." Kevin started the engine, choosing his words carefully. "I didn't know we were upgrading anything. I told you about the connecting rooms. You just weren't paying attention." Her tone carried that familiar note of exasperation, as if his failure to read her mind was somehow a character flaw. "You never listen when I talk about the details that matter. Maybe I don't have much to say." Lana's phone buzzed against her leg. She glanced at the message and smiled in a way that made Kevin's stomach clench, secretive and pleased, like a cat that had caught something small and helpless. "Good news?" he asked, keeping his voice level. "Just coordinating some details for the trip." "What details?" "You'll see." That smile again, the one that didn't reach her eyes. "It's a surprise. I think you'll find it interesting." They reached Crater Lake as the sun began its descent. The massive caldera stretched before them, filled with impossibly blue water that reflected the volcanic peaks. Tourist families clustered around viewing areas, snapping photos and reading information plaques. Kevin parked and helped unload their bags at the lodge. The rustic building perched on the rim like something from a postcard, all exposed beams and stone fireplaces. "This is perfect," Mira said, running to the windows that overlooked the lake. "Told you." Lana checked them in while Kevin carried luggage. "We've got connecting rooms on the second floor." "Connecting rooms?" Kevin paused at the base of the stairs. "I thought we booked a family suite." "Change of plans. Trust me, it's better this way." Rowan looked between his parents, sensing the undercurrent. "Why do we need 2 rooms?" "More space to spread out," Lana said quickly. "Come on, let's get settled before dinner." Kevin followed his family upstairs, his project manager instincts screaming that something was wrong. Lana had been planning this trip for months, obsessing over every detail. She didn't make last-minute changes without reason. Their room overlooked the caldera. Kevin set down the bags and stepped onto the small balcony, breathing in mountain air that should have been calming. Instead, his chest felt tight. "Kevin," Lana's voice came from behind him, artificially casual. "I need to tell you something." He turned. Mira was in the connecting room, trying to get the television working. Rowan sat on one of the beds, reading a park brochure. "I actually invited someone to join us for a few days," Lana said. "He's nearby, and I thought it would be nice to reconnect." Kevin went very still. "Who?" "Ash. Ash Keller. You remember him from high school." Of course Kevin remembered. Ash had been Lana's boyfriend before they'd gotten together, the musician she'd dated senior year and talked about for the first 5 years of their marriage. The one she'd called her first real love during arguments, always as a weapon to make Kevin feel lesser. "You invited your ex-boyfriend on our family vacation." "It's not like that. He's just a friend now. We've been talking, and he's going through a hard time with his music career." "I thought." "You thought what?" Lana's chin lifted in that defensive way he knew too well. "I thought it would be nice to help an old friend. He's staying in the other room. You can do whatever you want." Kevin looked at his wife, really looked at her, the satisfied smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. The way she'd phrased it as a done deal, not a discussion. The separate rooms that suddenly made perfect sense. "When is he arriving?" Kevin's voice stayed level, professional. The tone he used with difficult clients. "Actually," Lana glanced toward the window. "That's probably him now." A motorcycle rumbled into the parking lot below. Kevin watched a man with shoulder-length hair and worn leather jacket climb off a vintage Harley. Ash looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for aging indie musician, carefully disheveled, with the kind of studied casualness that took real effort. "Lana, beautiful as ever." Ash's voice carried up from the parking lot as he spotted her on the balcony. Mira appeared at Kevin's shoulder. "Who's that, Dad?" "Someone your mother invited," Kevin said quietly. Ash bounded up the lodge stairs with theatrical energy, all grins and open arms. He burst through their door without knocking, pulling Lana into a hug that lasted too long. "Kevin, man, good to see you again." Ash extended a hand that Kevin didn't take. "Thanks for letting me crash your family time." Lana said you wouldn't mind. Kevin looked at his wife. She avoided his eyes, suddenly fascinated by unpacking her toiletries. This is Rowan and Mira, Lana said quickly. Kids, this is Ash. He's an old friend from high school. Cool bike, Rowan said politely. Thanks, little man. Maybe I'll take you for a ride later. Ash ruffled Rowan's hair with the presumptuous familiarity of someone trying too hard. That won't be happening, Kevin said. Ash laughed. Still the protective dad, I see. Don't worry, I'm a safe driver. I'm sure you are. The silence stretched until Lana clapped her hands together. Who's hungry? The lodge restaurant looked amazing. Dinner was excruciating. Ash dominated conversation with stories about his music, his travels, his spiritual awakening in Colorado. He name-dropped musicians Kevin had never heard of and made inside jokes with Lana about high school classmates. When the waitress came to take their order, Ash flashed her a smile that lingered too long, his eyes following her movements with obvious appreciation. Remember when we snuck out to that concert in Portland? Ash said, gesturing with his beer, his third since they'd sat down. Your dad grounded you for a month. Worth every minute, Lana laughed, looking more animated than Kevin had seen her in years. Mira giggled at their stories while Rowan picked at his food, glancing at Kevin with worried eyes. Kevin cut his steak methodically, saying nothing but cataloging every detail of Ash's behavior. When the waitress returned to refill drinks, Ash caught her wrist lightly. Hey, what time do you get off? This place seems like it could use some live music. The young woman smiled politely, but pulled her hand away. We don't really do that here. Too bad. I could show you some real entertainment. Ash's voice carried the kind of casual arrogance that treated every interaction as an opportunity for conquest. Lana's smile flickered slightly, but she said nothing. Kevin noted that too. Kevin's not much of a talker, Ash said, as if Kevin wasn't sitting right there. Always been the strong, silent type. Probably never had much to say about anything interesting. He has his moments, Lana said, her voice carrying a note of defensiveness that surprised Kevin. Kevin finished his meal and stood. I'm going for a walk. Want company? Rowan asked quickly. Stay with your sister. Kevin walked out of the restaurant and into the crisp mountain air. The parking lot gave way to a trail that wound through old-growth forest, away from the lodge lights and tourist chatter. He walked until he found a rocky outcrop overlooking the caldera, then sat down and pulled out his phone. 23 missed calls from Lana over the past 3 hours. He turned the phone off. Kevin had grown up in foster care, bounced between homes that ranged from indifferent to actively hostile. He learned early that survival meant reading people, understanding their motivations, staying 2 steps ahead. Lana's move wasn't impulsive. She'd planned this, orchestrated it, probably been building toward for months, the separate rooms. The timing. The way she'd framed it as helping an old friend while setting Kevin up as the unreasonable one if he objected. He sat in the darkness for hours, watching stars emerge over the caldera. The temperature dropped, but Kevin barely noticed. His mind worked through possibilities, scenarios, responses. Not the explosive confrontation Lana probably expected, but something else. Something that would show her exactly what she'd chosen. When he finally returned to the lodge, it was past midnight. The parking lot was empty except for their SUV and Ash's motorcycle. Kevin climbed the stairs quietly and slipped into their room. Lana was awake, sitting on the bed in her pajamas. Where were you? I was worried sick. Were you? Of course I was. You just disappeared without saying anything. Kevin pulled a clean shirt from his luggage. I'm making other plans. What does that mean? He looked at her directly for the first time since Ash had arrived. It means you got what you wanted. Enjoy it. Kevin, you're being ridiculous. It's just a few days with an old friend. Is it? Lana's face flushed. Yes. God, you're so paranoid sometimes. Kevin nodded slowly. Maybe I am. He gathered his clothes for the next day and headed for the bathroom. Behind him, Lana's voice rose. We need to talk about this. You can't just shut down every time something doesn't go exactly your way. Kevin paused in the doorway. You're right. We should definitely talk. Just not tonight. The next morning, Kevin woke before dawn. He dressed quietly and loaded his gear into the SUV, then knocked softly on the connecting room door. Rowan? You awake? His son appeared, already dressed. "Smart kid. We're leaving," Kevin said quietly. "What about Mom and Mira?" "They're staying. Your choice if you want to come with me or stay here." Rowan grabbed his backpack without hesitation. "Where are we going?" "To see some old friends." They were on the road before Lana and Ash woke up. Kevin left a note on the bathroom mirror, taking Rowan to visit family. "You two enjoy catching up." "'Kay." As they drove away from Crater Lake, Rowan stared out the passenger window. "Dad, are you and Mom getting divorced?" Kevin considered lying, giving some reassuring non-answer. But Rowan was 15, old enough for truth. "I don't know yet, but some things can't be fixed. Because of that guy, because of choices your mother made, and choices I'm going to make." They drove in comfortable silence toward Spokane, where Kevin's oldest friend waited with honest answers and brutal advice. That DeAndre Pierce's garage sat on the industrial edge of Spokane, surrounded by auto salvage yards and freight warehouses that spoke of honest work and practical solutions. Kevin pulled into the gravel lot and spotted his childhood friend under the hood of a restored Mustang, dark skin gleaming with sweat, thick arms working with the practiced precision of someone who understood how things were supposed to work and wasn't afraid to fix what was broken. "Well, damn," DeAndre said, straightening up and wiping his hands on a shop rag that had seen better decades. Kevin Varnett in the flesh. "You look like hell, brother." They embraced with the easy familiarity of men who'd survived the foster system together, who'd learned to watch each other's backs when no one else would. DeAndre smelled like motor oil and honest sweat, a combination that reminded Kevin of simpler times when problems could be diagnosed and repaired with the right tools and enough patience. "This is Rowan," Kevin said, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. DeAndre wiped his hands more thoroughly before extending one to Rowan. The teenager took it without hesitation, meeting the older man's direct gaze with the kind of respect Kevin had tried to teach him. "Heard a lot about you, young man. Your dad talks about you and your sister all the time." DeAndre's grin was genuine, lacking the performative quality Kevin had grown tired of in adult interactions. Every phone call. Rowan made honor roll. Rowan scored 2 goals. Rowan built this amazing thing for his science project. Gets annoying, actually. Rowan smiled for the first time since they'd left Oregon, the expression transforming his worried face into something that reminded Kevin why he was fighting so hard to protect his children. "He builds things?" DeAndre asked. "I like working with my hands," Rowan said. "Dad taught me basic woodworking, but I want to learn about engines." "Smart kid. Engines are honest. They tell you exactly what's wrong and what they need to run right. Not like people." DeAndre shot a meaningful look at Kevin. "Come on. Let's get some coffee, and you can tell me why you look like someone just ran over your favorite dog." They sat in DeAndre's cluttered office, a space that managed to be both chaotic and organized in the way only a master craftsman could achieve. Tools hung from pegboards in precise arrangements, while invoices and receipts covered every flat surface and systems that made sense only to their creator. The coffee came from mismatched mugs that had probably been salvaged from yard sales, but it was strong and honest, like everything else in DeAndre's world. Through the grimy windows, Kevin could see his son examining the Mustang's engine with the focused attention of someone discovering a new language. Rowan moved carefully around the car, not touching anything without permission, but clearly fascinated by the mechanical complexity laid out before him. "So," DeAndre said, settling back in a chair with the kind of relaxed attention that came from years of listening to people's problems while his hands stayed busy with repairs. "Your wife invited her ex-boyfriend on your family vacation." Kevin had given him the bare facts over the phone during the drive from Crater Lake, but hearing it summarized so starkly made the situation sound even more surreal. "That's the summary. And you just left. With Rowan." DeAndre studied Kevin's face with the same methodical assessment he'd used to diagnose a complex engine problem. It was the sharp evaluation that had kept them both alive as kids bouncing between foster homes, learning to read the adults who held power over their lives. "You know what I'm going to say. Tell me anyway. You're not a man if you yell and scream and make a scene. Any fool with too much pride and not enough sense can do that." DeAndre's voice carried the weight of hard experience. Lessons learned in situations where the wrong response could mean the difference between survival and destruction. You're a man when you let them feel what silence really costs. When you make them understand that their choices have consequences they never saw coming. Kevin nodded slowly. That was exactly what he'd been thinking during his long night by the caldera, staring into the dark water and feeling something fundamental shift inside him. I've been too accommodating, too willing to bend. Nothing wrong with flexibility when it's reciprocal. But what you're describing isn't flexibility. It's manipulation disguised as love. DeAndre leaned forward, his voice dropping into the range they'd used as teenagers when sharing dangerous truths. Question is, how far are you willing to take it? As far as it needs to go, even if it means burning everything down. Kevin thought about Lana's satisfied smirk when Ash had arrived, the way she'd orchestrated the whole situation to make Kevin look unreasonable if he objected. The months of subtle manipulation and gaslighting that had led to this moment. Each incident small enough to dismiss individually, but devastating in their cumulative effect. She already burned it down. I'm just going to make sure she feels the heat. DeAndre grinned, but the expression held no warmth. It was the same smile Kevin remembered from their teenage years when they'd planned elaborate revenge against foster parents who'd crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. Now you're talking my language. What do you need? They spent the next 2 hours planning with the kind of methodical precision Kevin brought to complex construction projects. DeAndre had connections throughout the Pacific Northwest, people who owed him favors, information networks built through decades of helping broken-down travelers and listening carefully to their stories. First thing, DeAndre said, you document everything. Every conversation, every text, every social media post. Build a timeline. Already started. Good. Second, you protect your assets. Joint accounts, credit cards, anything she can access. Kevin pulled out his phone and logged into their bank account. I can move everything into escrow pending legal proceedings. Do it. Third, you control the narrative. She's going to try to spin this, make you the bad guy. Don't let her. How? Social media. Carefully worded posts that tell your side without looking bitter or angry. Let people draw their own conclusions. Kevin had never been much for Facebook or Instagram, but he understood the strategy. Lana lived on social media, crafted her image there. It was where she was most vulnerable. What about the kids? Kevin asked. That's trickier. Rowan's old enough to choose, and he already chose you. Myra's 12, more influenced by her mother. You'll have to be patient with her. They were interrupted by a knock on the office door. Rowan peered in, excitement brightening his face. Dad, can DeAndre teach me how engines work? If you want to learn, DeAndre said, I got time. Kevin watched his son dive eagerly into mechanical knowledge, asking intelligent questions and listening carefully to DeAndre's explanations. This was what Rowan needed: mentorship, practical skills, the attention of men who respected him enough to teach him real things. Not some aging musician trying to impress children with motorcycle rides and rock star stories. Kevin's phone buzzed. A text from Lana. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. He screenshot the message and added it to a folder he'd started labeled documentation. Then he typed back, enjoy your vacation. No response for an hour. Then the kids need their father. Kevin showed the exchange to DeAndre, who shook his head. Classic manipulation. Making it about the kids when it's really about her losing control. What should I say? Nothing. Let her fill the silence with more messages. People reveal themselves when they think no one's listening. Over the next 3 hours, Lana sent 14 more texts, each one more desperate and angry than the last. Kevin screenshot them all, but didn't respond to any. The final message came as they were leaving DeAndre's garage. Fine. Be childish. Ash says hi. That one made Kevin smile. Perfect. Where to now? Rowan asked as they loaded back into the SUV. To see your aunt. Rowan's eyes widened. Aunt Tessa? But you guys don't talk. We don't. But maybe it's time we did. The drive to northern Idaho took them through rolling hills and thick forests that seemed to absorb sound and soften the edges of civilization. Past small towns that looked frozen in time, with main streets lined by family businesses that had weathered decades of economic uncertainty through sheer stubborn persistence. Kevin hadn't spoken to his sister in 12 years, not since their last explosive fight about their childhood, their foster family, the different ways they'd chosen to handle the trauma that had shaped them both. Tessa had gone north, bought a remote lodge with insurance money from their foster father's death, and built a life of deliberate isolation. She'd chosen solitude over the possibility of being hurt again, creating a world where she controlled every variable and trusted no one completely. Kevin had gone the opposite direction, saw connection, built a family, tried to create the stability they'd never had as children. He believed that love and commitment could overcome any obstacle, that if he just worked hard enough at being a good husband and father, he could build something that would last. Now he was driving toward the life he'd rejected, wondering if his sister would even speak to him, let alone offer sanctuary for his broken family. Pine Ridge Lodge sat at the end of a gravel road that tested the SUV suspension and reminded visitors that reaching this place required commitment. The main building looked like something from a frontier movie, all rough-hewn logs and stone chimneys, with a wraparound porch that overlooked a pristine lake reflecting towering pines and granite peaks. It was beautiful in the way only untouched places could be, unmarked by the compromises and negotiations that defined civilization. Kevin parked beside a battered pickup truck and sat for a moment, gathering his courage. Through the lodge's windows, he could see warm light and the suggestion of a life built around practical necessities rather than social expectations. "She might not want to see us," he told Rowan, who was staring at the lodge with undisguised fascination. Only one way to find out. The front door opened before they could knock. Tessa stood in the doorway, looking exactly like Kevin remembered, but weathered by mountain winters and deliberate solitude. Her dark hair was shot through with gray that she'd made no effort to hide, and her blue eyes, their foster father's eyes, the one thing they'd both inherited from a man they tried hard to forget, held the same wariness that had kept them both alive as children. "Well," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "this is unexpected." "Tessa." "Kevin." They stared at each other across 12 years of silence and anger, two people who'd shared a childhood that had taught them to trust no one completely, not even each other. Kevin could see her cataloging details, his appearance, Rowan's nervous energy, the tension in their postures that suggested they were running from something rather than running to something. "This is Rowan," Kevin said finally. "Your nephew." Tessa's expression softened slightly as she looked at the teenager, her defenses dropping just enough to reveal the woman who'd once protected Kevin from foster parents who confused discipline with cruelty. "You look like your father did at that age. Stubborn and too serious for your own good." "Nice to meet you," Rowan said politely, but Kevin could hear the genuine interest in his voice. His son was studying Tessa with the same careful attention Kevin had taught him to use when meeting new people. Likewise, Tessa stepped aside with the kind of deliberate hospitality that came from years of running a business that depended on making strangers feel welcome. "I suppose you'd better come in." The lodge's interior was all exposed beams and stone fireplaces, decorated with Native American artwork and vintage outdoor gear. It felt solid, permanent, like something that had been there forever instead of built in the last decade. "Coffee?" Tessa asked. "Please." They sat at a rough wooden table while Tessa poured coffee from a pot that looked older than Kevin. The silence stretched until Rowan, bless him, broke it. "This place is amazing. Do you run it all by yourself?" "Mostly. I get help during hunting season, but the rest of the year, it's just me." Tessa glanced at Kevin. "I like the quiet. I can see why." "Can you?" "Last I heard, you were all about family and connection and building bridges." The edge in Tessa's voice was familiar, the same defensive anger she'd wielded as a teenager. "Things change," Kevin said quietly. Tessa studied his face, reading the exhaustion and pain he couldn't quite hide. "What happened?" Kevin gave her the same summary he'd given DeAndre, though with less detail. Tessa listened without comment, her expression revealing nothing. "So you left," she said when he finished. "I left. With your son." "With my son." Tessa was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the lake. "You know what I'm going to say?" Tell me anyway. I told you this would happen. 23 years ago, when you brought her to meet me, I said she was manipulative, controlling, that she'd use your feelings against you. Tessa's voice was matter-of-fact, not gloating. You call me bitter and jealous. Kevin remembered that fight, the last real conversation they'd had before years of stilted holiday phone calls and birthday cards. You were right. I usually am. Doesn't make me happy about it. I need somewhere to stay while I figure things out. Somewhere quiet, where Rowan and I can think. Tessa looked at her nephew, who was trying not to stare at the mounted elk head above the fireplace. There's a cabin about a quarter-mile up the trail. 1 bedroom, kitchenette, decent fishing off the dock. It's yours if you want it. What do you want in return? Nothing. Your family. Tessa's voice softened slightly. Even when you're being an idiot. They spent the rest of the afternoon settling into the cabin, a cozy structure that felt like a hunting magazine come to life. Rowan claimed the loft space above the main room, spreading his things across the small area with teenage enthusiasm. This is so much better than some hotel, he said, peering out the loft window at the lake. Kevin agreed. The silence here was different from the oppressive quiet of his marriage, natural, peaceful, restorative instead of suffocating. That evening, as Rowan fished from the dock, Kevin sat on the cabin's small porch and opened his laptop. Time to begin the careful work of dismantling Lana's narrative. He started with a simple Facebook post. I never imagined she'd use the kids to relive her past. But I won't interrupt the show. Just documenting the fallout. Nothing accusatory, nothing bitter. Just truth, delivered with the kind of dignity that made people ask questions. Within an hour, the comments started rolling in. Friends and family who'd sensed something was wrong, who'd been waiting for Kevin to say something. He responded to each one carefully, never revealing details, but letting his pain show through. His phone buzzed with a call from Lana. He let it go to voicemail. The message was predictable. Kevin, this is getting ridiculous. People are asking me questions I can't answer. Call me back so we can work this out like adults. He saved the voicemail and didn't call back. The next morning brought another text from Lana. Mira wants to talk to you. Kevin called immediately. His daughter's voice sounded small and confused. Daddy, why did you leave? Because sometimes adults make choices that hurt people, Kevin said carefully. And sometimes you have to step away to protect yourself. Are you coming back? I don't know yet, sweetheart. But I love you, and none of this is your fault. Ash is weird. He keeps trying to be all friendly, but he doesn't really listen when I talk. Kevin's jaw tightened. What do you mean? Like I was telling him about my art project, and he just kept nodding and saying, cool, but looking at his phone. And he told Mom she should let me drink coffee because it would make me more creative. Did Mom let you? No, but she laughed like it was funny instead of telling him it was stupid. Kevin closed his eyes. Lana was letting Ash parent their children, giving him authority he hadn't earned and didn't deserve. Mira, I want you to remember something. You don't have to be polite to people who don't respect you. If someone makes you uncomfortable, you tell them no. If they don't listen, you find Mom or call me. Okay, Daddy. I love you. Love you too. After Mira hung up, Kevin stared at his phone for a long time. Then he opened his contacts and found his lawyer's number. Scene 3, the power shift. Kevin gets temporary custody of Rowan and files legal notices for separation. With DeAndre's help, he moves joint savings into legal holding. Lana gets an overdraft message at dinner with Ash. She confronts Kevin by phone. His only reply, you wanted real love. Pay for it. Mira overhears at all point 2 hours later. He was sitting in Janet Morrison's office in downtown Spokane, laying out the situation with the same methodical precision he used for project planning. I want temporary custody of my son, and I want financial protections in place while we determine custody of my daughter, he said. Janet, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd handled his business contracts for years, took careful notes. Do you have evidence of infidelity? Not yet, but I have evidence of emotional manipulation, abandonment of parental duties, and putting the children in an inappropriate situation. Kevin showed her the text screenshots, the timeline he'd built, the documentation of Lana's behavior over the past months. This is good, Janet said. Thorough. But family court judges prefer hard evidence to emotional arguments. What kind of evidence? Financial records, communication logs, witness statements. Anything that shows a pattern of behavior detrimental to the children's welfare. Kevin pulled out his phone and logged into their joint bank account. She's been spending money on this trip that we didn't budget for. Separate hotel rooms, expensive restaurants, activities I never agreed to. Good. Print those records. What else? They spent an hour building a legal strategy that felt more like a military campaign. Kevin would document everything, protect his assets, and wait for Lana to make mistakes that revealed her true priorities. One more thing, Janet said as Kevin prepared to leave. Don't do anything stupid. No confrontations, no angry phone calls, no showing up where you're not wanted. Let her hang herself with her own rope. Kevin nodded. That was exactly what he'd been planning by the time he left Janet's office. The paperwork was filed. Joint accounts frozen, temporary custody established, the legal machinery of divorce grinding into motion with bureaucratic efficiency. His phone rang almost immediately. Lana, what the hell did you do? She demanded, her voice high and strained. My car just got declined at dinner. In front of Ash and everyone. I protected our assets during legal proceedings. You can't just freeze me out of our money. It's not our money anymore. It's evidence in a custody dispute. The silence stretched until Kevin could hear restaurant noise in the background, the clink of dishes and murmur of other diners enjoying meals they could afford. Kevin, this is insane. We can work this out without lawyers. You wanted real love? Kevin said quietly. Pay for it. He hung up before she could respond. Somewhere in the background of that call, he'd heard a young voice asking questions. Mira, overhearing everything, beginning to understand exactly what her mother had chosen and what it was going to cost their family. That afternoon, while Rowan helped Tessa repair a dock board, Kevin made his next strategic move. He posted another Facebook update, this one with a photo of him and Rowan by the lake. Teaching my son to fish in the place where I learned the most important lessons about patience, respect, and never giving up on the people who matter. Some relationships are worth fighting for. Others aren't. The post got twice as many likes as his usual content. More importantly, it painted a picture of a devoted father spending quality time with his child while his wife was... where exactly? People would wonder. People would ask questions. His phone rang almost immediately. Lana, what the hell is this supposed to mean? She demanded. Which part? This passive-aggressive social media bullshit. Some relationships are worth fighting for. Really, Kevin? I'm just sharing my thoughts on family values. You're trying to make me look bad. I don't have to try very hard, do I? The silence on Lana's end stretched long enough that Kevin wondered if she'd hung up. Then, I want to talk to Rowan. He's busy learning useful skills from adults who respect him. Kevin, stop it. This isn't about Ash. This is about us, about our family. No, Kevin said quietly. This is about choices. You made yours when you invited him. I'm making mine now. What does that mean? It means I filed for legal separation this morning. Your bank cards will be declined starting tomorrow while our assets go into legal escrow. Another long silence. Then Lana's voice, higher and more strained. You can't do that. I just did. I'll fight you on this. Good luck. Enjoy explaining to a family court judge why you brought your ex-boyfriend on a trip with our children. Kevin hung up before she could respond. An hour later, DeAndre called. You see the news? What news? Your boy Ash. Turns out he's got a wife and 2 kids up in Bozeman. Wife's been posting on Facebook about her missing husband who took off on his bike 2 weeks ago. Kevin felt something cold and satisfied settle in his chest. Send me the link. Already did. Her name's Jennifer Keller. She's been married to your wife's old flame for 8 years. Posted some real interesting stuff about his pattern of disappearing when bills come due. Kevin opened the Facebook link and scrolled through Jennifer Keller's increasingly desperate posts. Photos of Ash with 2 young children, appeals for information about his whereabouts, finally angry rants about his abandonment of his family. The timestamp showed she'd been posting throughout the week Ash had been in Oregon with Lana. This is perfect, Kevin said. Gets better. I made some calls, did some digging. Your boy Ash owes child support to 3 different women in 2 states. He's been using your wife as his latest sugar mama. Kevin saved every screenshot, every piece of documentation. By the time Lana discovered the truth about her first real love, Kevin would have enough evidence to bury her in family court. DeAndre, yeah, thank you. Thank me when this is over and you're free. Right now, this is just the beginning. Kevin hung up and stared out at the lake, where Rowan was casting a fishing line with the focused concentration he'd inherited from his father. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the water gold and orange. For the first time in months, Kevin felt something like peace. 3 days later, Lana's carefully constructed world began to collapse with the sudden violence of a controlled demolition. Kevin was teaching Rowan how to clean fish at the dock behind their cabin when his phone buzzed with an incoming call. Lana's name appeared on the screen, but instead of her voice, he heard sobbing that sounded raw and desperate. Daddy. Myra's voice was thick with tears, barely recognizable through her distress. Can you come get me? Please. Kevin set down his fillet knife immediately, his protective instincts overwhelming every other consideration. What's wrong, sweetheart? Are you hurt? Ash left. He just left in the middle of the night without saying anything. Mom found out he's married, and she's been crying all day. She won't talk to me or get out of bed or eat anything. Kevin's jaw tightened with a mixture of rage and grim satisfaction. The truth had finally caught up with Ash Keller, just as Kevin had known it would. Men like Ash always ran when their lies started unraveling. Where are you? Some motel in Oregon. It's really gross, and there's no food in the room, and Mom won't let me call anyone but you. She keeps saying she can't face talking to other people right now. What's the name of the motel? Give me the exact address. Mira recited the information in a shaky voice while Kevin memorized every detail. He was already moving toward his SUV, his mind shifting into crisis management mode. Stay right there. Lock the door and don't let anyone in except me. I'm coming, but it's really far. Like 8 hours or something. I don't care how far it is. I'll drive all night if I have to. Kevin's voice carried the kind of absolute certainty that had always calmed his children during their worst moments. Have you eaten today? There's some crackers from the vending machine. Mom gave me quarters before she stopped talking. Kevin closed his eyes, fury burning in his chest at the image of his 12-year-old daughter foraging for food from vending machines while her mother wallowed in self-pity. Listen to me, Mira. You're not responsible for taking care of your mother. That's not your job. My job is taking care of you, and I'm coming to do that right now. Okay, Daddy. Hurry, please. I'm already on my way. The drive from northern Idaho to central Oregon took 8 hours through mountain passes and winding highways. Kevin pushed the speed limit while Rowan navigated from the passenger seat. Both of them focused on reaching Mira as quickly as possible. How did Ash just disappear? Rowan asked. Because that's what cowards do when they get caught. Kevin said grimly they'd spent the drive piecing together what must have happened. Jennifer Keller's Facebook posts had gotten increasingly frantic, finally including photos of Ash with Lana at various tourist spots. Someone must have recognized him and contacted his wife. The truth had come out, and Ash had run, leaving Lana alone with Mira in some roadside motel, probably with maxed-out credit cards and no plan. The riverside and looked exactly as depressing as Kevin had imagined a 1970s relic with peeling paint and neon signs advertising weekly rates. He found their room on the second floor and knocked softly. Mira? It's Dad. The door opened to reveal his 12-year-old daughter, who immediately threw herself into his arms. Behind her, the motel room was a disaster of scattered clothes, empty food containers, and tissues. Lana sat on one of the beds in rumpled pajamas, staring at nothing. Mom's been like this since yesterday, Mira whispered. She won't eat or shower or anything. Kevin looked at his wife, feeling a mixture of anger and disgust. Even in her breakdown, she was performing, making sure Mira saw her as the victim rather than the architect of this disaster. Pack your things, he told Mira. You're coming with us. She can't just leave, Lana said without looking up. I'm her mother, and I'm her father. Right now, you're not fit to take care of anyone. Lana finally raised her head, and Kevin saw the full extent of her deterioration. Dark circles under red eyes, unwashed hair, the hollow look of someone whose carefully constructed world had imploded. He lied to me, she said. Ash lied about everything. He's married. He has children. He was just using me. I know. You know. Her voice sharpened. How do you know? Kevin pulled out his phone and showed her the screenshots DeAndre had sent. Jennifer Keller's Facebook posts, photos of Ash's real family, his history of abandoning responsibilities. I've known for 3 days, Kevin said calmly. Lana stared at the phone, her face cycling through confusion, realization, and finally rage. You knew, and you didn't tell me? Why would I? You made your choice. You let me humiliate myself. You humiliated yourself. I just documented it. Mira looked between her parents with wide, frightened eyes. Kevin knelt down to her level. Go pack your things, sweetheart. Rowan's in the car. But what about Mom? Mom is going to figure out her own situation. You're coming home with me. Lana stood up suddenly, swaying slightly. You can't just take her. I won't let you. Try to stop me. The words hung in the air between them, cold and final. Kevin had never spoken to his wife with such complete dismissal, and they both knew it represented a fundamental shift. The minute you brought him around our children, Kevin continued, you forfeited the right to call this a family. Kevin, please. I made a mistake. I know that now. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work things out. No. I don't forgive betrayal. Not then, not now. You made your choice when you invited him. You made it again when you booked separate rooms. You made it every day you chose him over your family. Lana's composure cracked completely. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I just wanted to feel something again, to remember who I used to be before I became just your wife and their mother. And now you can be whoever you want. Just not with us. Kevin helped Mira gather her scattered belongings while Lana sobbed on the bed. His daughter moved quickly, efficiently, like someone who'd been waiting for rescue. Is Mom going to be okay? Mira asked quietly. Your mother is going to figure out how to take care of herself. That's not your job. Mira secretly calls Kevin. He drives 10 hours overnight with Rowan to get her. Lana tries to stop them. Kevin says coldly, the minute you brought him around our children, you forfeited the right to call this a family. She begs. He stares, unreadable. I don't forgive betrayal. Not then, not now. They loaded Myra's things into the SUV, where Rowan waited with poorly concealed relief. His sister climbed into the back seat and immediately curled up against him. Kevin stood in the motel parking lot for a moment, looking back at the door where his wife of 23 years sat alone with the consequences of her choices. Behind him, Lana's voice rose from the open doorway. Mira, please. You can't just leave me here. I'm your mother. I love you. Mira turned in the car seat, her young face set with a determination that reminded Kevin of himself. Dad was right. You broke us. The words hit Lana like a physical blow. She staggered back a step, her hand flying to her mouth as if she could somehow take back what she'd heard. But there was no taking it back. Her own daughter had just delivered the verdict that Kevin had been too diplomatic to speak aloud. Mira, honey, I never meant. You brought him on our family trip. You picked him instead of us. Myra's voice was steady, final. Now I'm picking Dad. Kevin felt something cold and satisfied settle in his chest. He hadn't coached this response, hadn't even hinted that Mira should choose sides. She'd seen the truth of the situation with the clear eyes of childhood and made her decision accordingly. As they drove away, Mira asked the question Kevin had been dreading. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Yes. Good, she said quietly. She's been different for a long time. Mean different. Like she forgot how to be our mom. Kevin caught Rowan's eyes in the rearview mirror. His son nodded in agreement. They drove back to Idaho in comfortable silence, stopping only for gas and food. When they reached Pine Ridge Lodge, Tessa was waiting on the porch with hot chocolate and the kind of practical compassion that had kept them both alive as children. Room for one more? She asked Mira. Yes, please. That night, Kevin sat on the cabin's porch while his children slept safely inside. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from Lana, apologies, threats, bargaining, more apologies. He read them all, but didn't respond to any. The final message came at 2 a.m. I'm going back to Portland. I'll fight you for custody. Kevin screenshot it and added it to his legal file. Then he composed a careful response. Good luck with that. Over the next weeks, Kevin's methodical approach bore fruit with the inexorable precision of a construction project executed by skilled professionals. Lana tried to restart her podcast, framing herself as a woman learning from mistakes and growing through adversity. Her first episode back, titled When Love Leads You Astray, A Journey of Healing, painted her as someone who'd been manipulated by a charming sociopath who'd taken advantage of her generous nature. Kevin listened to it once, taking careful notes, then quietly provided context to mutual friends and family members. He shared screenshots and timelines that revealed the full scope of her deception, the calculated nature of her choices, the way she'd orchestrated the entire situation while setting him up to look unreasonable if he objected. The response was swift and devastating. Her audience, built on trust and authenticity, evaporated as people realized they'd been fed a carefully crafted narrative that bore little resemblance to reality. Sponsors canceled contracts with the kind of corporate efficiency that meant someone had done their research and decided association with Lana Varnett was a liability. Her victim narrative collapsed under the weight of documented evidence, leaving her isolated in the Portland apartment she'd rented with money from their joint savings account before Kevin had moved it into legal escrow. Meanwhile, at Pine Ridge Lodge, something unexpected was happening. Kevin and Tessa were rediscovering their relationship, finding common ground in their shared commitment to the children and their mutual understanding of what it meant to survive difficult circumstances. The siblings who hadn't spoken in 12 years began having conversations that lasted until dawn, working through decades of accumulated resentment and misunderstanding. "You know," Tessa said one evening as they watched the kids fish from the dock, "I always thought you were too soft for your own good. And now I think maybe soft was a wrong word. Patient might be better. Strategic even." She smiled with genuine admiration. "You played this perfectly. Let her hang herself with her own rope while you documented every twist." Kevin felt something ease in his chest, a tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying since their last fight. "I learned from the best." "Damn right you did." Rowan and Mira thrived in the mountain environment, gaining confidence and skills from their aunt's practical wisdom and their father's steady presence. Rowan had become Tessa's unofficial apprentice, learning everything from basic carpentry to small engine repair with the focused intensity he brought to everything that interested him. Mira had discovered a talent for photography, documenting their new life with an artist's eye for beauty in simple moments. "Dad," she said one afternoon, showing him her latest photos on the camera Tessa had given her, "I like it better here. It's quieter, but in a good way." Kevin knew exactly what she meant. The silence here was different from the oppressive quiet of his marriage, natural, peaceful, restorative instead of suffocating. It was the difference between holding your breath and breathing deeply. The final blow came 6 weeks after they'd settled at the lodge. Ash Keller was arrested in Bozeman for failure to pay child support, just as Kevin had predicted based on DeAndre's research. The local newspaper ran the story with his mugshot, and within hours it was circulating on social media with the kind of viral intensity that destroyed reputations in real time. The headlines wrote themselves: local musician arrested for deadbeat dad charges, while wife searches for missing husband. Jennifer Keller's Facebook posts from weeks earlier were republished as evidence of his pattern of abandonment, creating a narrative that painted him as exactly what he was: a selfish man who used women and abandoned responsibilities when they became inconvenient. Lana called that evening, her voice hollow with defeat and exhaustion. "I saw the news about Ash." "Did you?" "Kevin, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I messed up, but please don't let this destroy our family." Her voice broke on the last word, and Kevin could hear genuine desperation beneath the performance. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but the kids need both their parents." Kevin looked through the cabin window at Rowan teaching Mira how to tie proper fishing knots while Tessa supervised from her chair on the dock. They were laughing about something, their voices carrying across the still water with the kind of carefree joy he hadn't heard from them in months. "Our family isn't destroyed," he said quietly. "It's just different now. The kids need their mother. The kids need stability, honesty, and adults who put their welfare first. If you can provide that, we'll talk about supervised visitation. If not, what? If not, you'll keep making the same choices you've always made, and they'll keep choosing to be somewhere else." The silence on Lana's end stretched long enough that Kevin wondered if she'd hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and defeated. I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted to feel special again, to remember who I was before I became just someone's wife and mother. You were always special. You just forgot that being a wife and mother was part of what made you special. Kevin's voice softened slightly, not with forgiveness, but with the kind of sadness that came from watching someone destroy something precious through their own choices. You threw away 23 years for a fantasy that was never real. I know that now. Knowing and changing are different things. When you're ready to prove you've actually changed, call my lawyer. Until then, leave us alone. Kevin hung up and turned off his phone, feeling no satisfaction in her pain, but no regret for causing it either. Tomorrow, Janet Morrison would file the final divorce papers. Next week, he'd start seriously looking at property near the lodge. By winter, they'd have a permanent home in the mountains, surrounded by family who understood the value of loyalty and the cost of betrayal. He walked out to find Rowan and Tessa working on a construction project behind the main lodge. They'd started building a tree house in an old oak that overlooked the lake, using reclaimed lumber and basic tools with the kind of careful craftsmanship that would last for generations. "Dad, come help us with this beam," Rowan called, gesturing to a long piece of timber that needed to be lifted into place. Kevin joined them, feeling his shoulders ease as he focused on the simple, honest work of building something meant to last. Below them, Mira sat cross-legged in the grass with a set of paints and a wooden sign, her tongue poking out slightly as she concentrated on her lettering. "What's the sign say?" Kevin asked. Mira held it up proudly. In careful, colorful letters, she'd painted the Varnet tree with small flourishes that turned the letters into something approaching art. "For when it's finished," she said. "So everyone knows this is ours." Kevin looked at his children and his sister, all of them working together on something that would outlast whatever storms might come. The treehouse would be a place of safety and joy, built by hands that loved each other, in a location where they'd chosen to make their stand. He sat down on the dock afterward and watched his children discover the peace that came from being exactly where they belonged. "Any regrets?" Tessa asked, her voice carrying the comfortable understanding of someone who'd made her own difficult choices and lived with the consequences. Kevin considered the question seriously. 23 years of marriage gone. The life he'd built in Portland, abandoned. The man he'd been, transformed by necessity and pain into someone harder but more honest about human nature. "No," he said finally. "No regrets at all." The sun set behind the mountains, painting the lake gold and crimson while a loon called across the water with a voice that sounded like freedom itself. Kevin Varnet had learned the most important lesson of his life. Sometimes revenge wasn't rage or destruction. Sometimes it was simply the quiet dignity of rebuilding without the people who'd broken you. Sometimes the best revenge was peace.